Our second guest is a renowned and award-winning meteorologist, viral weather star, and just all-around amazing guy. His work spans the years, and his education initiatives and documentaries have touched the lives of countless people. Please give a warm weekly show welcome to Mr. Alan Seals. Alan. Everybody knows you from your time with WKRG over in Mobile, but you're not originally from the Gulf Coast, correct? You're from New York originally, yeah?
I'm from New York, and what confuses people, I tell them I'm from Mount Vernon, and they assume it's Mount Vernon, Alabama.
Yes.
But it's Mount Vernon, New York, which is right on the border of the Bronx.
Now, we were talking a little bit, backstage earlier about the whole accent thing.
Right.
And I'm originally from New York, and I've been down here, since '89. So I've lost a good bit of mine.
Yeah.
Occasionally I find myself saying y'all and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you see people who are in sportscasting, newscasting, weathermen, there's a different inflection.
Correct.
That you're taught. Is that in part why you no longer have the accent? But were you taught to sound more germane?
I taught myself. And I taught myself, I went to Cornell undergrad, which is kind of like a suburb of New York City.
Yeah.
So you hear the New York accent everywhere you go, you're talking it. And from Cornell to Florida State, and that's when I really heard, because as a broadcaster, you have to listen to yourself talking. And that's when I really heard that I didn't use the letter ah too much. That I really had to slow down when I talk. So it took me a good 5-6 years to soften the New York accent. And to this day, I have to listen to myself talk, or else I drop the letter R.
Do you find yourself, I know when I go back home, I'll find myself picking it back up again.
Just like that.
Right around family, and they'll be talking, then before you know it, you'll be sounding like you always did.
Literally 5-10 minutes, as soon as you land at the airport and you start hearing it around you, it just naturally comes back, even if you try to fight it.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you're going, you've got a problem with that.
Right.
So what brought you down to the coast? Was it the job?
It was the job. My career, which I've had a great career as a broadcast meteorologist. First job, Albany, Georgia. Second job, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I met my wife, and she fell in love with me, so I married her. From there, we moved to Chicago. We were in Chicago for 9 years, and then I hit the point in Chicago where I realized that even though it's a great place to live, it's expensive, quality of life is not the best, but the job situation was tenuous because everyone's trying to get there. So at the same time, the opportunity opened up in Mobile to get to WKRG. They had just bought a radar. They just had their first helicopter, so they were really investing in weather, and it was just the right place at the right time.
What made you decide to, when did you know you wanted to go into, become a meteorologist?
Yes, I think like all people, I grew up with a natural fascination of the weather. Third grade, our teacher took us outside to look up at the clouds and try to imagine the shapes that the clouds reminded us of. And while we were doing that, in my brain, I said, why is it that the clouds float? Because they're made of water, and water is heavy. The clouds are made of water vapor, and chemically, water vapor is lighter than dry air, which doesn't make sense until you go back to earth science and look at the periodic table of the elements. But intuitively, to me, to this day, it's incredible that a cloud can move along the coastline, drop 2 inches of rain on your house, and 30 minutes later, it's dissipated, it's gone. Just that, to me, is just fascinating.
Did you, when you first decided you wanted to become a meteorologist, were there other meteorologists you looked up to or said, hey, that's who I want to be like?
Actually, no. My first career choice as a kid was baseball. Wanted to be a professional baseball player. That didn't happen, obviously. But I played trumpet from third grade through high school. And I was honestly a good musician, but I was not a good performing trumpeter. And I knew I could never make a living at it. And all through my growing up years, I just had a simmering interest in weather. And 11th grade, when it came time to decide what will you study and do for the rest of your life, TV weather came to mind. In part, my dad worked behind the scenes at CBS News in New York, so subliminally something was in my mind. but it's the combination of the science, the performing, and the community service that told me that this could be a good profession. And then to directly answer your question, I like to think that my style is unique, how I present weather, but my role models as a presenter, two of the biggest ones were actually Richard Pryor and George Carlin. Now, obviously, I can't use the type of language they use, but those guys were excellent storytellers. And to this day, I could recite their jokes line by line because they could paint a picture in your mind. And their jokes were funny because they were true. And they were universal, which is like the weather.
Well, and that's the thing about comedy, is comedy, they say, comedy is only funny if it is either A, at somebody else's expense, or B, there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
And if there isn't some truth to it, people don't associate with it, it's not funny.
Right.
So that makes sense. What are some ways that you think meteorology touches society kind of as a whole?
Every way you can imagine. From the moment you're born and you inhale oxygen, which is 20% of the air, nitrogen is most of the air, to how you die, whether it's heat related, cold related, weather related. In Minnesota, in the winter, if it's too cold, they can't dig the grave. They've got to wait for the ground to thaw out. So weather plays a big role in our life, our comfort. You talk about hurricanes on the Gulf Coast. It plays a big role in your economic status, property tax, insurance, where you live. On a daily basis, transportation, a big part of the U.S. economy, it's all based on the weather. Law, for example, so many weather-related cases. Back to Hurricane Katrina, a case about, was it wind damage or was it storm surge damage, which was a big deal.
Oh, I handled a lot of those cases.
Yes.
I know the whole wind versus flood debate.
Yeah.
And some creative ways of dealing with it. But that's a big problem in all the Gulf Coast states, from Florida all the way to Texas.
Yeah, so to me, the great thing about my profession is it impacts everybody. It doesn't discriminate on age or race or zip code or religion or sexual orientation or political party. And it's something I think that everybody can relate to.
Is there something, okay, so you were up in Milwaukee, you were up in Chicago.
Right.
Because we're down here in the Gulf Coast with the tropics, are there things that you focus on differently than what you focus on up there? I mean, do you focus more on tornadoes up there?
Right.
Do you focus on hurricane? What are things do you focus on more?
Without a doubt. If you're in the Midwest, most of the time you're looking to the west or northwest for what's coming. Here in the summer, you're looking to the east for what's coming toward you.
And the south.
So that's your big difference there. Amazing thing on Lake Michigan, it could be a sunny day, very light wind, really cold in the winter. If the wind shifts just a little, you get clouds coming in from the lake and you get snow on the lakeshore while it's sunny a mile away.
Now, you did a documentary on climate change in 2009.
Right.
What was the focus of that? Where did you take it? And what did you learn on that journey?
It's I learned that people are interested in climate change. And my whole purpose of doing it was to just explain, here's what it is, here's what we know. And the science of climate change is totally different from the politics of climate change. And the science of climate change is that the Earth's climate is changing, and it has always changed. But right now, in a court of law, you have circumstantial evidence that says we are a part of that change. Whether we're the big part or small part, we're definitely a part in our daily lives of using resources, mostly natural resources, coal, methane, and even the way we clear our land to build new structures. We've changed the balance of the Earth. And people say, well, how could we do that? We're just this small. But I say, well, what if you get 10,000 termites in your home? They're going to take the home down. So we do have an impact. We do impact climate and climate change. And my big message to everyone is, get ready for change, adapt, and then talk about the politics of what countries and nations should do. But all of us, we're a small part of it.
What are some of the weather myths that a lot of people believe but just simply aren't true?
Weather myths, talk about hurricane myths. There's one that hurricanes only come at night. And I think people think that because those are the scarier ones. When you can't see and your world is shaking, you're scared and you remember that. But Katrina landfall was during the day. Dennis landfall was during the day. A lot of the hurricanes do make landfall during the day. Other myths with tornadoes. Everywhere you go in the country, people say, oh, well, tornadoes don't cross rivers, they don't cross valleys, they don't cross cemeteries, but they do. They go wherever they want to go.
And now you're currently on some sort of hiatus from TV weather.
Correct.
What does your future look like? What are your plans?
Yeah, so my contract with Channel 5 in Mobile ended, and we were unable to reach an agreement. We literally were too far apart. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's not what we wanted, but okay, I accept it. So I am planning and hoping to be back on TV on the Gulf Coast in the not too distant future. So I will pick up where I left off, and in the meantime, I'm doing Facebook. We've got a YouTube channel, Alan Seals Weather, and I'm just doing what I've always done, letting people know what's going on.
Alan, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it. And we'll be right back.